Hello again. I have another section of the book I'd like to read for you, and it's when the party reaches sort of their final destination, at least at the end of this book, the Vishnanshire. And man, this part of the book, I just couldn't put it down. Like, from here on to the end, it was just like boom, 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 boom. So, I'm really excited to read sort of the opening bits of getting into the Vishnanshire. But also, full disclosure, this part of the book introduces my character that Mikey and I had played in our Dungeons and Dragons games that inspired the books themselves. So, his name is Byron, and although we may not get to the part where he arrives in this excerpt, this gives a really good introduction into the world and the culture and everything of the Shire. So, I hope you enjoy. Chapter 13. Welcome to the Shire. The land gives us our life, water from the streams, food of the forest and soil. To seek the outside world is to deny the paradise and bounty we have been blessed with here in our homeland, and to introduce it to those who will wish to steal it away from us. Praise Taea, and praise the paradise of Vishnu. A prayer to Taea. The island country of Vishnu was painted with all the red, orange, and yellow the sunrise could offer. It was massive, and rivaled the size of Furnisio. From a distance, it appeared as a wilderness of dense forest that traced the entire perimeter, as far within as the eye could see. Large, brightly colored birds soared through the air, and the squeaks and snarls of wildlife gave no hint of civilization within. The Yoshi encircled the island and found no ports or ship landings of any kind. The party dropped anchor and gathered on the deck. Lee was leaning over the rail, admiring the sounds of foreign creatures. The green and tan of his robe showed fading from their time in the sun.
"This is beautiful!"
Drogon rested a hand on his shoulder. "It is." "Why are we here?" asked Marlowe. "Simple," Drogon replied. "We're looking to recruit them against Donahue."
"I've never heard of this place,"
said Lee. Marlowe nodded with agreement. "They don't interact with the rest of the world by choice, hence no ports," Drogon explained. "But within that wilderness is a formidable village of Florins. They have been self-sustaining for generations off a land as bountiful as you can imagine. It's no paradise. No, it's riddled with dangers. They're survivors. They're led by a champion. His name is Tarkus Milton, if I remember right."
"What are Florins?"
asked Lee. "Don't call them halflings." Marissa leaned over the rail next to Lee.
"Really?"
said Lee.
"Why?"
"It's offensive to them. Who wants to be called a half-being of any kind?" Marissa said.
"What about Garf? He's a half-breed, or is there another name for that?"
Lee asked. Garf was sitting on the deck, his legs outstretched and sipping on a tankard of what is most certainly ale.
"Oi, Scrap. I'm a half-breed, all right. There's no soft way to say it."
"Is there another name for your race?"
Lee was unsure if just asking was being rude.
"Believe me, half-breed's the least offensive name to call me."
Drogon approached Garf and reached down his hand. He moved his fingers, beckoning Garf to hand over the tankard. Garf let out a grunt and handed it over. With a sniff, Drogon proceeded to pour its contents over the side and tossed Garf his canteen. He sipped at it with a disgusted look on his face. Drogon rejoined the group. "It doesn't matter what race you are. I don't know you as half-breed or son of Simone. I know you as Garf. Be the best version of that you can be."
"Aye."
Garf held up a canteen with a toast and pressed it to his lips, twisting his face in disgust.
"Drogon, I don't understand,"
Lee started.
"If the Florins here in Vishnu are cut off from the rest of the world, why are we here? Why would they even help us?" Wouldn't we be better off trying to get the army of Chun or Faris?
Drogon joined them at the rail. They're not known to be open to outsiders, sure. That's why a small party going shore would be best and less intimidating. Tarkus, the champion here, was trying to change all that. From what Stein mentioned to me back in Sundale, Tarkus is looking to open Vishnu to the world. And to be honest, likely sooner than later, Donahue will set his sight on the precious resources here. This is not the introduction to foreign politics I would want them to have, but this is going to reshape the world for all of us. If they're going to help us, it would be because they are intelligent enough to see that it is now or never, and that they must trust in what we tell them enough to act. As for Chun and Faris, they've been at war with one another for as long as history can remember. It is a fact that they will not put aside their differences for anything, not even the end of the world. Stein and I felt this strongly enough to avoid charting the course altogether.
Whatever started all that with Chun and Faris? Asked Marissa.
I have no idea, Drogon laughed. And I don't think they know either. Garf stood up.
Let me get my blades and I'll be ready to go.
Marissa peered at him.
Go where?
If only a few are going ashore, I want to be part of it. I need to move around a bit.
Garf replied.
I think you should relax here at the ship. Maybe stretch out, do some exercises, said Lee.
Exercises?
Garf argued.
I'm no lass, Scrap. The only exercise I do is with my blades or my...
He trailed off and went down the stairs to gather his things. Garf, bring a crossbow instead, please. Drogon yelled towards Garf, and then turned to Marissa. Maybe keeping him at a distance will help. Up for babysitting with me? She smiled.
I'd love to.
Lee jumped in place.
I want to come too. I can help.
Drogon thought for a moment. It might be dangerous. Are you sure, Lee?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I have a feeling Garf won't take no for an answer, and the safest place for him is as close to you as possible. So you can come, but you stay right next to me and Marissa. Understood?
Yes, definitely.
Lee ran downstairs to gather his things. Marlowe stomped away, frustrated to yet again be stuck on the Yoshi. He began tending to the rigging and tightening some loosened knots. Don't be like that, Marlowe. We're going for a less intimidating look with Vishnu. We'll get you out there in Gashamar. Drogon shouted to him. Drogon slanted back on the rail next to Marissa, who was still looking out over Vishnu.
Beautiful place, she said.
You're beautiful, he replied, a tenderness carried in his tone. Marissa turned around, pressing her elbows back onto the rail next to him. Her arm and hand grazed against him ever so gently.
Last night, she whispered, the way you held me was beautiful. It was perfect, actually.
I couldn't agree more. He leaned in to kiss her, but heard footsteps running up the stairs.
I'm ready.
Lee planted his staff firmly on the deck. Garf was right behind him.
Oi, can't wait to get some dirt under my boots again.
Drogon, Garf, Marissa, and Lee climbed onto a small rowboat off the starboard side. Marlowe took to the pulley to lower them down slowly. His strength as a minotaur made working the load of their weight an easy task. As the rowboat met the water, the party saw only Marlowe's horns looming over the rail. They detached the rope of the pulley, and Drogon took to rowing towards the shore. The tide was coming up, and did much of the work to bring the rowboat in. Drogon jumped out once the water was knee-deep, to pull them up into the sand. He offered each of them his hand to help them out, but held tight an extra few seconds to Marissa.
You know what?
Garf asked bluntly. Drogon's eyes traced the tree line. Let me get my bearings, and we should be able to move towards Vishnu. Garf proceeded to stretch out his shoulders and legs with awkward poses, making sudden, sharp movements and grunting.
I'm not sure that's the right stretches, said Lee.
Garf twisted quickly. A painful groan escaped him as his joints cracked.
Why, I'm just loosening up a bit. Hard to when Drogon won't let me drink.
Drogon was still taking in the surroundings. You're useless when you're drunk.
That's ridiculous. I'm Garf if I'm drinking or not,
Garf replied. Drogon's stare fell upon Garf. Yes, you most certainly are. He pointed towards the tree line. Over there it looks like a path. Lightly traveled, but I bet it leads to Vishnu.
It might be patrolled, Marissa added. We should stay sharp.
The pathway was narrow and kept them moving single file. Drogon led, followed by Marissa and Lee, and then Garf at the rear. As they moved through the forest, they observed some of the most sizable spiders they had ever seen. Perched up on a tree branch was a large, well-nourished bird with shiny, bright blue feathers. They moved past slowly as it watched them, and the bird opened a spread of pearlescent tail feathers that rose several feet and into the canopy of leaves above it. While exotic, this bird had a majestic beauty that the party could only describe as divine as they admired it. They continued along the path for about an hour. Drogon knew they must be almost at the center of this forest. The woodland creatures became quiet. Drogon held up a fist to signal a stop, a signal that Garf only noticed when he tripped over Lee and met the trunk of a tree with his shoulder, and a loud thud. Before they could draw their weapons, a faint movement in the brush around them became an eruption of leaves and loose branches. A dozen Florins sprang out, instantly surrounding the party. They were camouflaged with paints and foliage attached to their clothing. They stood between 4 and 5 feet tall and wore elaborate leather and hide armors that demonstrated a fine craftsmanship. Each had a crossbow aimed or a sword sharpened and drawn, ready to attack. The group raised their hands into the air slowly. "We mean no harm," said Drogon. "We've come to meet with Tarkus. I am Drogon of the Radiant Empire." As the words of Radiant Empire crossed his lips, the Florins stepped closer, showing contempt and rage towards the very name of the kingdom. One of the Florins stepped forward with flowing brown hair waving behind her. She lowered the weapons of the man and woman next to her. Her armor was slightly different in that it revealed the smooth, pale skin of her neck and chest. It also consisted of a shortened cape off the shoulder clasps. Her tone carried authority, that of a seasoned veteran.
Stay your weapons for a moment.
The other Florins took a step back.
I am Ari, of Vishnu. What is your business with Tarkus?
Drogon kept his hands at shoulder height. He sent word to the Radiant Empire some time ago looking to open conversations. We're not sure what his intentions might have been, but there's a lot going on in the world that I'm sure he'd want to be aware of.
So then, you're not with them?
Ari asked. With whom? Drogon probed. She said,
The 2 men and woman in red. A woman? It couldn't be. Did she have white hair, red eyes, crimson armor with golden trim?
said Marissa.
Yes,
Ari replied.
What do you know of them?
Drogon relaxed his shoulders. They're called the Red Five. They attacked us out at sea. Ari scanned them up and down.
And yet you still live? With what I witnessed, anyone whom they wished dead would have met Taea. A lucky cannon shot blasted the woman, Iris, clear off our ship. We used the opportunity to get away.
Marissa looked to Drogon.
How could she have survived?
Ari's face was stern.
No one could survive a cannon blast. We must be speaking of different people. This woman, a dark elf, fought like a demon with a Goliath and an elf in similar armor. They attacked in the night 2 days ago, murdering 2 of our scouts and 4 of our guard. We do not expect such power from 3 warriors. She hesitated. I will tell you this, since I don't believe you're with them. Tarkus is dead. It would seem that was their goal, because they left soon after. The dark elf skipping and singing as she left.
A brief silence.
Tarkus is dead? Asked Garf. Is there someone else we can talk to?
Drogon shot him a silencing look before turning back to Ari. We're sorry for your loss. The death of a leader is a most difficult time.
Your kindness is appreciated, yet unnecessary. Those warriors were of the Radiant Empire, so it was your people that did this, even if you are unaffiliated with them, she said.
I understand your hesitation to allow us in, but there's something terrifying going on out in the world, and those warriors are only the start of what is to come. We need to speak with your people, Drogon said. Ari glared at him.
Are you threatening us? No, we're here to help, Lee offered. What makes you think we need your help, child? Asked Ari.
With the dangers that lay across the sea, we need each other's help more than ever, said Drogon. And his name is Li Chang, a master cleric from the Radiant Empire. He can help any of your people who might be wounded from the attack.
Ari looked over the party and took a moment to think of what to do with them. I am intrigued at what this world threat might be. It is becoming apparent that we're not as informed or isolated as we hoped. I will allow you into Vishnan should you agree to relinquish your weapons from here on. I would also like to ask you, Master Li Cheng, if you would tend to one of our ill. Of course I will. Li parted with his staff.
Drogon handed over Rain, but was left with his shield. Marissa likewise kept her shield. Garth gave them his crossbow and all but one of the 13 knives and daggers hidden on his person. The last one he knew they couldn't find without a most intimate search. Ari and the other Florins of Vishnan kept them surrounded as the group was escorted through the forest. The trail wound through shrubbery and tall trees with brightly colored leaves. The entirety of the walk they heard faint chirping of songbirds and wildlife. The deeper they hiked, the more potent a smell of dampened wood was carried on the wind. At last, the party broke through the tree line to see a large open field. It was the most vibrant green of rolling grass hills they had ever seen. In the center of this vast field was a cluster of small, reddish wooden huts and cabins that were nestled near one another. The structures were partially covered in a similar vibrant moss, and vines of brightly colored flowers tangled up along them. What disturbed this immaculate bond with nature was the 100 Florins that were hurrying around the field, rolling boulders and dragging freshly down trees and lumber. Many were soiled and carried an air of exhaustion about them. Surrounding the village was a partially constructed wall. Presently, it was only 5 feet tall, but the supports looked as if it would stand 20 feet once it was completed. Only a single foundation was laid for a gate to enter. They walked through the dirt-worn paths of Vishnu. The people distanced themselves from the outsiders, stopping their work to pierce the party with judging stares. Some whispered, others spit on the ground, but all of them wore a look of fear or anger. I'm not so sure we're going to get the help we're looking for here, whispered Marissa. Drogon hurriedly replied, Without Tarkus, I'm not sure either, but we're already here, and we have to try. They followed the sway of Ari's long, brown hair as she led beyond the gathered workers and through the village of small, meticulously landscaped homes. At the center of these houses was an elaborate town square, complete with a center stage and various gazebos, benches, and swings. The decorative gardens surrounding the square were brilliantly colored with blues, yellows, greens, and purples. Here, there were many Florins organizing chairs and tables of foods, as if setting up for an event. Atop the stage were several cushioned seats and a podium. On the north side of the square was the largest building in Vishnan yet, and set apart from the rest. It was constructed of blackened, dark wood, seasoned by the sun and weathered for an unknown and timeless period. They were led up to the porch and stopped. Ari turned to face them. This is the champion's estate, Tarkus's former home. Viren is inside. He'll be the one you want to speak to. Is Viren the next champion? Said Drogon. Ari was hopeful.
That remains to be seen. Is there an election process? Asked Marissa. No. It is a spiritual trial. Viren must complete the trials of the champion in order to become the leader of Vishnan, until he or any worthy Florin completes the trial. We are in the idle period of focused survival. For the first time since Taea blessed us with these lands, we are worried that the world seeks to destroy us. We're building walls to defend ourselves, Ari explained. This is not his home, at least not yet. Byron is grieving, you see. Tarkus was like a father to him. I know he's under a great deal of pressure to step into the role of champion. It's what the people need of him. But he's a family man. I don't think it was ever the path he'd wanted.
Drogon nodded. I understand. May we speak with him?
Yes, she answered. I have told you what we're going through, so you'll understand there's much emotion surrounding him, and to choose your words carefully. We appreciate that, said Marissa. Ari continued. May I bring your cleric to check in on Kreia? Our shaman has been struggling to relieve her sickness.
Absolutely. Would it be all right if Garf stayed with him? Said Drogon.
That would be fine.
You have a shaman? Here? Lee asked excitedly. Can I meet him?
Ari began leading Garf and Lee towards one of the neighboring houses. Our shaman is a woman, and her name is Gala. She is an elder and practiced alchemist.
Oh, he sounds more like a witch to me, Garf chuckled.
Ari smiled. She prefers shaman. As Ari, Garf, Lee, and a handful of the Florin guard walked down the dirt path, Drogon and Marissa stood at the bottom of the step with the remaining guard loosely positioned around them. One of the guards spoke.
We'll be out here. Byron's inside. Come back out this way when you're done. I'm curious. Why would the escorts stop here? You kept a tight leash on us through the entire town so far, said Drogon. The guard laughed. The escort was for your own protection. You're Byron's problem for now.
Drogon responded with a nod, and both he and Marissa started up the stairs. The wood of the stoop was similar to that of the building. Every inch was blackened as if it was scorched by some intense and consuming blaze. Lashing lines ran up the planking, showing where flames once licked up the building like a hungry monster, unable to devour its prey. Given the smaller stature of the Florin people, the size of the door surprised them. The door was 8 feet tall and spanned the entire width of the stoop, nearly 6 feet. It was similarly scorched, with an axe-shaped handle protruding out. The blackened wood of the handle was rubbed smooth from use. The door was massive, but to their surprise, it opened smoothly given the enormous weight of it. They stepped into an open kitchen and dining room. A table was centered in the room with books and papers thrown about, and at the head sat a Florin man. His sandy blonde hair was cut short, and matched the scruff that traced his face and chin. Bloodshot blue eyes were affixed into a journal he clasped in his hands. His voice carried an educated and defined pronunciation, yet cracked with sorrow as he spoke. What is it you want from me? Drogon and Marissa approached the table, but did not sit. Marissa gripped the back of another chair. We came to meet with Tarkus, and heard about what happened here. We are sorry for your loss. Byron didn't move his eyes from the pages. About 2 days too late to meet with the champion. What is it that you want with me? I think it's a good place to stop. Thank you again for listening. I know that last bit was a bit longer, but man, what a great introduction. I'd just like to say thank you to Mike for setting all this up, and also just giving me an opportunity to have some fun and use some voices. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the festivities.